Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez here with you. We're recording this on Thursday, May the 5th, Cinco de Mayo. And we got some stuff to celebrate here as we move along into the month of May. We've also got Andrew Glukov and Bryson Turner with us here today. It's a busy show as we move through the spring. And again, full-blown off-season topics that we're going to talk with you about today. We're going to talk a little bit NFL draft, some conference movement stuff happening as well. Some men's and women's basketball. Got some more transfers to talk about for the men's side. Women's hoops. Masani Kaba, what's her status with the Chicago Sky? She looks like she might be making the roster, but a little bit. Tennis and golf. But gentlemen, we start with the teams that are in action right now, that is UCF Softball and UCF Baseball. And Eric Lopez, we're going to lead with softball today here because that's exactly what we should be doing. Ain't that right?
Darn right. It's only the biggest regular season series in number of years for the program with high stakes, as they like to say. So as we like to say in softball, it's mayhem right now. All
right. So, let's set the scene right now. UCF softball are at 14-1 in the conference, first place. 42-11 overall. They've won 3 in a row. They come off of a big sweep of Tulsa at home. Senior Day on Sunday, a combined no-hitter, plus a walk-off hit to end it, 8-0 in 6 innings. And that's where UCF finds themselves right now as they get ready to head to Wichita for a 3-game set to end the regular season. Now, let's talk about the series that just wrapped up, Elo, against Tulsa. First of all, thank God it wasn't played at Tulsa, right? It was at home.
Amen.
Second of all, once again, what a celebratory moment for the program to end that series and the home schedule the way that they did. Hopefully it's not the last home appearance for the team.
Who knows?
Could be. We don't know. But your thoughts on the weekend in that sweep of Tulsa?
Well, I think the Sunday game was huge. I thought it was the most complete game they've played in a couple of weeks offensively. They kind of been scuffling offensively. They started clicking in that Sunday game. Good balance. Everybody in the starting lineup got a base hit at least. But the story of this team really the last month or so has been their starting pitching and the 1-2 punch of Gianna Mancha and Kemal Woodall, and it was fitting that they would throw a combined no-hitter on Senior Day because they have dominated conference play to this point. They only allowed 1 run to Tulsa in the 3-game series. While their offense was kind of scuffled a little bit in the first 2 games, they played good defense. If you watch SportsCenter over the weekend, you would see UCF softball a lot. You saw the Kennedy
twice, yeah.
Kennedy seriously robbing the Tulsa Kylie Norwood of a base hit that could have tied the game on Saturday. That was a top 10 SportsCenter play. And then obviously Sunday, SportsCenter did a segment on UCF and doing a no-hitter. So it was a packed weekend from that standpoint. And they took care of business to sweep. And what a great weekend to celebrate that senior class and finish off a tremendous regular season home slate where they're still top 22 in attendance in the country. Most wins at home in a season since 2016. So that was kind of one of their goals this year, was to protect the Plex, as they say. And they did that. They took care of business against Tulsa and really avoided a bad loss in their resume. They, that's one of the things is we're down the stretch here now. Is you want to, part of the chances of hosting is you want to avoid a bad loss. And the way you avoid a bad loss is a quad 4 loss. That would have been the case here if they would have lost the game to Tulsa. They have 0 quad 4 losses. Their worst loss to this point is a game at Houston, and Houston actually just upset Texas A&M twice on Wednesday, which is very good news for UCF in their resume because that jumped Houston in the RPI from 87 to 74 and jumped UCF from 17 to 16 as of this morning, as we record this on Thursday morning. So, very successful weekend, awesome weekend, one of the more memorable weekends. And now, for the rest of the year, UCF will be playing for some sort of a championship the rest of the way.
So let's spin this forward to this Wichita State series that's coming up. UCF is 1 game up on Wichita with 3 to go. So you got to win 2 of the 3. Is that right? Because if they win 2 out of 3, yes, you're tied, but they get the tiebreaker.
Correct. They would win the tiebreaker. They would share the regular season title, but Wichita would win the tiebreaker, which means they would get the 1 seed, which is significant because whoever's going to be the 2 seed is going to be in the same bracket as South Florida, which means you're going to have to see Georgina Corrick more than likely in the semis. Plus, good chance you're going to have to play ECU, the host school, in the opening round.
Yeah. Now, Wichita is 41 in the RPI, at least as of Monday. So give us the lowdown on them right now, because they've only played, is this right? They've only played 8 games at home this season?
Yeah, it's I don't know if you've noticed, Wichita, Kansas, not the most greatest place in the world as far as weather is concerned, not the most ideal. So hard to play home games.
Yeah, but it's not Syracuse, New York.
It's Wichita. I mean, who wants to play in Wichita? I mean, who's going to fly to Wichita? I mean, it's not the most easiest of places to get to. But what they have is a heck of a team, and they have one of the most dynamic offenses in the country. I mean, other than Oklahoma, no team has scored more runs this year than Wichita State. They're led by Addison Barnhart, who is on track to be the first softball player ever in Division I to be a first 30-30 player. 30 homers, 30 steals. She's the first Division I softball player to be at 25 homers and stolen bases. She's number 1 right now. She leads the country in homers, leads the country in RBI, second in OPS. Somehow USA Softball left her out of the top 10 finalists for Player of the Year and the top 25 finalists, which is baffling, but whatever. They have Sydney McKinney, the reigning American Conference Player of the Year. So, they're the team to beat. They're the defending champions. So it's fitting in a way that for UCF to win the first regular season title since 2015, they're going to have to go through the champs. For Wichita State, this is a big series for them because they do need to win in this some against UCF to add to their resume to get in. Because you mentioned their RPI. They're kind of a bubble team. I personally think they're in. But, a win over UCF would pretty much lock up a bid for Wichita State. For UCF, it's a chance to win a regular season title and really put a big statement as far as hosting. Because finally, one of the things that's hurt UCF the last few weeks is they haven't played a team inside the top 50 RPI. They'll get a chance this weekend. And if they can beat Wichita State and win the regular season title, man, that puts them a step closer to possibly being in the mix to host. So it's a huge series.
You think they got to sweep this or just get 2 out of 3?
Depends who you ask, right? I personally think they only need 2 out of 3. Some would say they need a sweep. So it depends on how.
I mean, it would be nice to sweep. A little less margin for error.
Correct. That's the key. If you get a sweep, boy, then that's going to be a pretty strong it's going to be interesting. But this is the group. This is why they've played. This is why they wanted to get to this point. They wanted a chance to win a conference title. It's unfortunately they got to play in a bandbox. That so it's which it's just a joke where a blooper might turn into a true a homer. And really, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a series similar to what we saw with baseball a couple of weeks ago, where it would turn into a football score, because that park is the most friendly hitters park in the country by far. The key is UCF is going to have to keep the ball down, and it could come down to which team gives up not only the fewest home runs and keep the ball in the park, but if you're going to give up home runs, solo homers. Don't give up 2-3 run homers or grand slams. When UCF made their one trip in 2018, that's what cost them, is they gave up 2-3 run homers and grand slams. You're going to give up a homer or two in that park. Just keep it into solo homers. The good news for UCF is Kama Woodall has won in that park, and obviously Gianna Mancha right now has been on fire. So it's going to be strength versus strength in that series, and UCF's got their own firepower back after their performance on Sunday on offense.
I want to spin forward to the conference tournament too now, because it starts on Thursday, a week from when we're recording this, on Thursday, May the 12th. This is why the 1 seed is so important, because in the tournament, the 1 seed gets a bye to the semis. So, and looking at it right now, is that, yeah. So they've got, right? One seed gets a bye to the semis.
How many teams are getting in? No, only 7?
7 teams.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so look at that. We just broke some news on Eric Lopez here. I'm like, wow.
You know why? Because I've blocked out this tournament since they took it away from us. I really have not thought about it.
Oh, I see. That's right. Well, it's going to be at ECU. It's homecoming for Kama Woodall. But I think this is I think where you're talking about the RPI is really important, because you get the 1 seed. You're not going to have the number 8 team on your resume dragging down your RPI. You're going to you're going to be playing the winner of, what is it, 4 versus 5, right? So at this very second, 4v5 is let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, well, there's only 7 teams anyway, but 4v5 is Houston and Tulsa. So ideally, you want to play Houston, right? So,
well, I mean, more ideally, you want to avoid Georgina Coric in South Florida. That's really the bottom line there. You would like to avoid her as much as possible if you can. But you make a great point with this bye situation. Whereas you're the 2 seed, you're going to play a bad team in the 2 seed as far as RPI wise is concerned. And unfortunately, the problem UCF is in right now is you're kind of in a narrow margin where you have teams like in the SEC, and I'll break down right now. Okay, I can tell you this. I think there are 2 spots available right now to host. I think that we really don't know the 15 seed and the 16 seed probably, or to some in that area, and it's between UCF, Texas, LSU, Missouri, Georgia. Well, the advantage that the other teams that I mentioned have that UCF doesn't is those teams are going to play quality teams in their respective conference tournaments, especially the SEC, where it's top 50 every game. And then Texas will probably get to play Oklahoma State in the Big 12 tournament. So UCF doesn't have that luxury. So they have a lesser room for error, than those teams. And that's just unfortunate, but that's reality. So UCF has to kind of be close to perfect here. And, it is what it is. I mean, that's just, if UCF was in the Big 12, like right now, we wouldn't be having this conversation. They would be hosting, but we're not yet. Are we, guys? Are you sure? We haven't announced anything yet? Are we sure? We can't announce
We'll get there. We'll get there.
I was going to say, Shannon Doherty's walk-off homer against Georgia is really coming back to help them here.
Well, it could be huge. And don't forget the walk-off against Virginia Tech. That's just as significant because Virginia Tech is actually number 1 now in the RPI.
They leapfrogged Oklahoma, who's only lost 1 game. How did that happen?
The RPI is flawed, but anyway, it's why. And I've told the committee chairperson Sandy Atkins about this. If the RPI is not good enough for basketball, it probably isn't good enough for anybody. And I think we need to come up with another system for this, because UCF has gone 11-1 in the last 12 games and dropped 6 spots in the RPI. When you're being punished for winning games, like, you're better off having games getting canceled to improve your RPI. Your system's flawed, and that's
here's the thing though, is and this is, it's not about when you play, it's about who you play. Right? And, you know, I mean, UCF's opponent this week was a relatively weak opponent. You know, if they had played, let's say they had played Tulsa at the start of the conference season, and then instead of USF or somebody like, let's pick somebody who's higher up in the RP. Yeah, let's say USF.
Right, they opened with USF, right?
Then UCF's RPI would have gone up.
Yeah, but the problem is UCF has no control over that. It's not. That's my issue. Is you're punishing a team for something they have no control over.
But every program has this problem.
No, they don't.
Right.
Not the SEC. Not the SEC. That's
my
point.
The SEC and the Pac-12 are really strong. I mean, Utah is 43rd.
Big 12
in the Pac-12, and they're 24-24, and they're 43rd.
Right.
You go a little bit below that. South Carolina at 48 has a losing record. I mean, you get the benefit.
Yeah, the issue is who you play. It's not when you play.
Yeah, but again,
why do you think UCF's changing conferences? It's stuff like this.
Good point.
No, I agree. That's why I said if we're in the Big 12, we wouldn't have this problem because in the Big 12, the worst team, Kansas, is inside the top 100. But my point is that my issue with the committee is they need to look at that. Like, to me, you should punish teams in the non-conference because the non-conference, you have control in who you play. The conference, you don't. Like, UCF doesn't have a choice. They have to play Tulsa. You can't go to the conference and say, guys, we'd rather not play to help our resume if you don't mind. It doesn't work that way. You know, so as a result, when you look at the stats, it's going to look like the SEC played the SEC teams. Oh, look at the SEC. They played all these great games in the top 50. Well, yeah, because they get to play them every weekend in the top 50 because it's skewed. It's skewed towards the major conferences. So, yeah, it's tough for a mid-major. And I do think this is significant. I think this is a very significant moment for mid-majors because if UCF, I can tell you this, as of this morning, and again, this could change drastically, UCF right now has 12 wins against the top 50. They have the 16th strongest non-conference schedule. They did what they had to do. Every non-Power 5 team since 2008 that's had 10 wins or more against the top 50 has gone on to host. So if UCF doesn't host, they will go down as the best, probably non-Power 5 team not to host. And I do wonder, with all this realignment, with Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC and et cetera, if the days of a mid-major hosting in baseball and softball and any sport are dead. And that, to me, would be unfortunate. But we could be headed in that direction. And this could be it'll be interesting to see if that happens. Now, UCF's got to take care of their business here. We're getting ahead of themselves. They need to take care of this business this weekend. Because if they don't win the conference regular season title, that's probably going to be the excuse they're going to use for them not to host. Even though there is no requirement to host. To win a conference title, to be a host. But the committee will use that as an excuse, and I don't know if them losing this weekend and then winning the conference tournament would be enough for them to host.
Well, you got to expect some cannibalization on those conferences, the SEC, the Pac-12, and even to a lesser extent the Big 12. There's going to be some cannibalization still to become. Oregon is a fringe team for Well,
I'm going to tell you right now, Oregon has no business host, and this is that's a great example. I'm glad you brought that up, Drew. Oregon is the example of why the RPI is a fraud. Right. They have zero wins against the top 25. Zero. UCF,
they have quality losses.
Yeah, exactly. UCF has 4 top 25 wins. Oregon is 8-14 against the top 50. The only reason why they have the 16th, they're in the 60, and they actually dropped to 17 this morning, according to my RPI this morning, is because they have the strongest schedule, quote unquote, which is very misleading as well. The RPI is flawed. I give credit to basketball.
Well, wait a minute. Doesn't that have to do with their non-conference, like you were saying?
It has to do with the Pac-12 as well. UCF has a stronger non-conference schedule than Oregon, but Oregon, because they're in the Pac-12, that's the advantage they have. And to Drew's point earlier, this is why UCF has to move to the Big 12. Forget the finances, although we'll discuss that because God, nobody can shut up about it anymore. Competition-wise, this will help all the UCF teams, well, not host because the Big 12 tournaments will be all neutral sites. But as far as hosting regionals,
NCAA, yeah.
If they're still in NCAA by then, absolutely. Well,
It's
we'll have
not
a
going
chance.
away in 2 years.
No,
I
not
know,
yet.
everyone's-
It's going to take longer than that for anything to ever actually happen.
Here's my all right. So your softball bracketologist rival Eric Lopez, Hayden King of College Sports Madness,
Oh God, not him. Oh.
has
I trust
has
you.
UC
You could do a bracket better than him. But go
has
ahead.
UCF as a going to Gainesville, and
No.
Florida as
Whoa.
the 8 overall seed.
And 247 Sports also has UCF as a 2nd seed going to Gainesville.
We're
but-
original, guys.
But
Whoa.
Florida in that bracketology is an 11th seed, not an 8th seed.
Now Florida right now, I should say their RPI is 9.
Correct.
So
I have Florida as an 8 seed right now. So
do you have UCF hosting in yours?
I do. I have them as a 15 right now. I think they have a better resume than Texas. I think it would be a joke if Texas hosts. However, Texas plays games on the Longhorn Network, and a certain network likes to have every regional televised, and it would help them if Texas hosted because they could put that regional on the Longhorn Network.
Yeah, these guys don't have Texas.
Well, they shouldn't host.
They have,
but
they have,
might as a brand.
they have. Let's see. They have Duke at 15.
That's a little
Kentucky
low
at Kentucky.
for that.
At
Oh God, Kentucky. That's the example.
Kentucky
of
shouldn't be hosting.
No.
Tennessee at 14.
That's low. Who is these clowns? What are you doing? Just follow Extra Innings Softball. Follow Extra Innings Softball. I know what I'm talking.
Kentucky 20. Kentucky 21 in the RPI.
Well, the problem with the reason why Kentucky's always is attractive is the stupid 400-mile radius rule because everybody in the country can bust to Lexington basically. So it's an easy regional to fill out with 3 teams to bust there, which is why we need to get rid of the 400-mile radius, which we will once we get rid of the NCAA, which will happen when, Drew? 4 or 5 years, we're thinking?
It's going to be a little bit.
Never.
There's still stuff to play out. I honestly do not believe that Division I wants to get rid of the NCAA. They would have already they would have already left. They don't want to do it. It's a pain to run.
No,
this
it's not.
stuff.
It's not the Division 1. It's the
Major conferences.
Power Five.
It's the Power Five. They talked about leaving. They used the threat of leaving to get their autonomy. They were. It was a bluff. Really.
We'll get there in a
wanna
second.
We'll get it. Anyway.
We'll get there. Listen, I don't want to go down that slippery slope just.
But look, like I said, it's a
We'll
big
get there.
series. It's a big series. UCF. Either way, look, yes. If UCF does not host, are they going to go to Gainesville? More than likely. Absolutely, they're going to go to Gainesville. More than likely, because the way the system's set up, they're going to be sent there because of the mile radius. And again, they don't seed 17 through 32. That's a misconception. And I don't blame the committee for this. This is the NCAA's fault because they're cheap. They're a bunch of cheap bastards who deserve to lose all their jobs. So
Tell us how you really feel, Eric. Stop holding back.
I'm on the power. I'm on the major. Now that we're going to the Big 12, I'm on their side. Get rid of the NCAA. Let's run our business, baby. Let's go. But so as a result,
I don't know if the possibility of UCF hosting a regional is going to be that much higher in an all P5 tournament. I
think Big 12, yeah. I mean, they could win the Big 12. I mean, it's them in Oklahoma State,
Well, yeah.
possibly. So yeah, I mean, the Big 12 is strong in softball. But anyway,
Never say never.
never. But who knows? But we'll see what happens. But yes, if UCF right now, it's either hosting, and if they don't, they're probably going to be a strong 2 seed in Gainesville because it is an even year, and we always go to Gainesville.
Bryson, you had a question?
Yes. So UCF is at 16 in the RPI right now, right? So is there something that can happen to the teams directly ahead of them that if they stumble this weekend or in their conference tournaments that could help UCF's chances to host? Now, obviously the RPI is a flawed ranking.
Well, you got to win against Wichita first of all.
Yeah,
You
obviously.
got to take care of your business
That's
first.
your best.
Yeah,
That's
no,
your
obviously
best
that
opponent the
first.
rest
But what
of
I
the
mean
season.
is like, what can give them a little nudge?
Yeah, it
little
would be great
nudge
if Texas loses to Baylor. Be great.
It'd be great if Florida crapped out.
No, that's not happening. I mean, that's not going to happen. So, I mean, that sail is shipped, or whatever the term would be.
You need teams like Kentucky and LSU. You need those guys to stumble. You need the fringe teams to stumble.
Exactly. And more importantly, it's not just this weekend, it's next week in the SEC tournament. You don't need, for example, a Georgia or an LSU or a Missouri or Kentucky to get to the SEC final, because the SEC tournament influences, I've seen it over the years, it influences who hosts. Like there's a few years
geez.
ago when Ole Miss won the SEC tournament. Nobody had them hosting and going into the SEC tournament. They win the SEC tournament, they hosted. So that's the type of stuff. And then you need Texas to lose to Oklahoma State again if they play in the Big 12 tournament. So things like that. But UCF has to take care of their own business.
Can we talk real quick about Florida, by the way, Eric, like you were mentioning? They don't have any SEC games left the rest of the regular season. They're at home for their last 4 against an absolute murderer's row of Mercer twice and Florida Gulf Coast twice before they play the SEC tournament, which will be located in Gainesville, Florida.
Man, that's a gauntlet.
I'm going
right
to
there.
that tournament. I mean, I'm going next week. I mean, it's the first time that Florida's hosted the SEC softball tournament since
Your
05.
best hope for this is to have either, have basically chalk it. Have Alabama and Arkansas run their ways through. That's UCF's best opportunities.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Pac-12 and the Big 12. Chalk it. Let the top guys. They're not going anywhere. Let them, move to the top, and let the fringe guys in the middle fall off.
Yeah. Real quick, Eric, Jada Cody, what's the latest on her chase for the RBI record?
Well, she's at 62 RBIs on the season. That's 4 away from tying Stephanie Best, who had 66 in 2003. I keep reminding
Does the postseason count towards those numbers? Okay.
It does count. Keep in mind, too, back then they played way more games than they do now. Like, I think Steph did 66 RBIs in 68 games in 03. Whereas Jada Cody's currently, in her 53 games through. So she's still ahead of the pace. But the bigger story there, so I think she still has a shot to break it. It'll be close. But hopefully she does. Heck, Wichita's a very friendly hitter's park, as I've mentioned. So would not surprise me if she has a good weekend this weekend. She could break it this weekend. But I think the key for them is Shannon Doherty. She had a monster weekend against Tulsa, and that's huge because when Doherty and Cody and Searcy run this offense, they're the power bats, they're the explosive bats. Everybody else is more the contributing bats, the small bats, if you will. And they need to be solid. They're going to have to score runs against Wichita State. You can't depend on Mancha and Woodall to shut down this offense in that park because that park should really be illegal. But that's my opinion on that. I mean, I would abolish that.
How can a ballpark be illegal?
Because it's a joke. I think it's like 190 to left. It should be 200 to left, 220 to center. Like, that baseball series against Wichita was a joke. But whatever. I don't have say. The good news is, hopefully, and it should be, will be the last time UCF has to ever go to Wichita for softball. So,
they still have to play next year.
Yeah, but that'll be here in a real park. An actual
real park
softball complex.
Eric, I think you're being way too modest here.
Yeah, wow. You think?
Okay, so here's where to watch it. All 3 games are on ESPN Plus in Wichita. Friday at 7, Saturday at 2, Sunday at 1. And again, Eric, UCF has to win 2 of 3 at Wichita to clinch the regular season title and win the and the number 1 seed for the conference tournament next week at ECU, which would ostensibly help their RPI and also smooth the path since, again, single elimination tournament, which you know how I feel about that, but
ain't changing.
Only 2 wins to win the title, so
like 2015, ironically, UCF had a bye when they won the regular season title in 2015. So they only had to play the semis. They beat South Florida, and then Samantha McCloskey hit a walk-off against Tulsa to win the championship when we hosted, like we were supposed to host this year. Did I mention that? We were supposed to host.
We were supposed to host this year, which we'll get to more of that in a second, in the next segment. But let's move over to baseball real quick. UCF got the win over UNF 8-5 last night in their midweek. 3 home runs in that ball game for UCF. Cameron Crane got the W, and UCF panned out 13 hits in that game. Noah Orlando had a 4-for-5 day. Really nice job for him. So that takes us to baseball's schedule right now. And the situation for UCF right now in baseball is they are 1 game back, tied with Houston, 1 game back of ECU for first place. ECU, remember, after last week, UCF, did what they had to do against Tulane. But ECU swept their series. So ECU has that 1-game edge over Houston and UCF right now for the regular season title. The Knights are right now at 27-17, 10-5 in the conference, and now they have to go to South Florida for 3. Friday at 6:30, Saturday 2, Sunday at 1. All those games will be on the radio. Will they be? I don't think that they're not listing them as on ESPN Plus. I don't know if that's the case or not. They should be on ESPN.
Yeah, this one thing that's frustrated me with with the way the schedule page is worked is that they don't seem to put the TV things on the road games. Like, for example, North Florida was on ESPN Plus, and
I always go to the opposing site. The USF is carrying.
Yeah, let me look up real quick.
Ryan Urquhart, my friend, actually reached out. He's going to be the color commentator, I believe, for the series.
So they are going to. Okay, so that is going to be on ESPN Plus. And Urquhart's good. He knows what he's doing. Although South Florida right now is very vulnerable at 23-21, and they got boat raced by Florida their last time out, 18-3. They've lost 4 in a row, including getting swept by Houston over the past weekend. But yes, ESPN Plus for those three games via USF. So Bryson, situation right now for UCF is pretty clear, right? Just keep winning. We could talk about the regular season title all we want, but right now, like Eric, you said before, this is a down year for the American. So the real thing is going to be the tournament, which is going to give you the bye. But Bryson, the situation right now for UCF baseball is if you want to make your path as easy as possible, just keep getting wins, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. The higher seed that you can get, the better. Because if it's a down year in the American, then that means that getting a 1 seed matchup versus 8 seed would absolutely be paramount, especially since if you win that first round game, you get the day off the next day, which is huge for the bullpen, which the bullpen has been a source of a bit of struggle for Lovelady as of recently. You talk about that North Florida game where the UCF had a 7-1 lead in the 6th inning after starter Cameron Crane and then reliever Jacob Marlowe. And then since then, they gave up 4 runs that got it to within 3. The good news is that they actually have run support now. Yeah. So now they actually are able to hold off a late rally, which I am amazingly happy about. And I also would like to mention Ben Vespi has quietly been working his way, because he has a 2.25 ERA right now and had the game of his career against Tulane on Saturday, where he had a pitcher's duel with Tulane's Dylan Carmouche, and UCF ended up getting a 2-1 win thanks to two runs scored in the 7th. But a very well pitched game there by Ben Vespi, and considering the starting pitching injury struggles with UCF with Connor Stain and Hunter Patterson, having a guy like Ben Vespi come in and do that, absolutely paramount. And then I've mentioned before how the offense seems to have redeemed itself. And what's amazing enough is that they were down another bat against Tulane. Lex Bodecker was out, is one of the hitters with a batting average higher than 300. He was out with a back injury this week. Now he was back for North Florida, so it seems like Tulane was just to kind of rest him a little bit and not injure him any further. I mean, I wouldn't blame Lovelady if I was in on that one, but the fact that they didn't even have him for that series and they still got the 2-1 series win, absolutely huge, absolutely well done. And I couldn't say anything more. Tulane is a conference opponent that you needed to get the series win against, and they did that. So absolutely well done.
Huge on Sunday to get that win as well. So now you spin it forward to South Florida. And then I think this is actually key also for UCF. On Wednesday, after the South Florida series, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but look, there's a good opportunity. You get 2 out of 3 on the road at South Florida. I think you're pretty happy, even though they're 4-11 in conference. Chance for a sweep, but just win the series as far as I'm concerned. Then you play at number 2 Miami on Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
And that's an opportunity to really boost your RPI, because as I'm looking at these rankings here, and we've discussed this, at length, but UCF doesn't have a very favorable RPI for an at-large bid right now. I'm
92. They're
92, yeah. So
part of the problem is the league is number 9 in conference RPI right now, which
low.
is for
Miami's right now. Miami's RPI is 12.
Yeah.
So if they can get that win on the road, I'm not saying it's going to jump them, jump them past bubble range, but it's going to help, right?
Oh, it helps, but I think unfortunately because of the league being so down, which I'm surprised. I don't know. Do you have any theories, Jeff, why the league is down this much? Because this league is normally top 5. They're on pace to be the worst year ever for this league in baseball. D1 baseball only has East Carolina projected to be in as the automatic bid as a 3 seed. I'm just kind of stunned at how down this league is. I mean, the Big Ten is ahead of them. I mean, good Lord. I mean, they play in snow over there. I mean, what are we doing? Conference USA is ahead of them. The Sun Belt's ahead of them. The Missouri Valley's ahead of them.
It's hard for me to say. I think that the one real problem is, and I think UCF is kind of a victim of this a little bit, is especially in the early season, the pitching was a real struggle for some of the top of the league. Like ECU got off to a bad start. I think that didn't help anybody. Tulane got off pretty rough, I think. It is just one of those years for the American. I don't think this is necessarily a trend, although, I think the league is also still adjusting to not having UConn in baseball. I mean, UConn consistently, and there's no arguing this, consistently was a top-notch baseball program.
Yeah, but they didn't have them last year, and the league was strong.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it's still the tail of that is long.
I mean,
right?
You remember this season. Sorry, I was saying, you remember this season started with Ryan former UCF coach Ryan Klosterman. They swept ECU to begin the season.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's tough. It's been a tough year, but I'm looking at UCF's resume. I'm looking at their nitty gritty. They have wins over Georgia Southern, which is significant. Georgia Southern is number 7 in the RPI.
Number 7, yeah.
Miami, they have a win who's 12 in the RPI. That's pretty good. The reason why their RPI is so bad is they have 6 losses as of right now. They have 6 losses against the Quad 4. And those are teams like Jacksonville, North Florida, and then Greensboro. And those are losses that are just kind of hurting this team right now in the resume.
But even if you flip them, I don't know if that boosts them all that much more, does it?
No, but when you lose,
obviously it helps, but I don't know.
You lose Quad 4 games, man. It just sucks you down. It's tough to recover from that. And the problem is the remaining schedules in the conference, like Houston right now is 76. Normally, the beauty of the American is that you can make up ground easily because of how strong the league is, but that's just not the case this year. Houston's down. Everybody's down.
We finished the season with Cincinnati, and they're 166 in the RPI.
Right. I mean, it's just tough, and it's tough to sweep anybody. So your odds are you're going to get a loss. So, but like you said earlier, they need to just focus on trying to put themselves in the best position. Look, you're still going to get rings if you win the regular season title. The only reason why we bring this up, I don't want some people like our boy Noah, man. He's a diehard, passionate baseball guy. He gets excited when they win these series. I gotta remind him, don't get your hopes up. Just because you win the regular season title does not mean you're going to the NCAA tournament. See, it's the automatic bid is the tournament. Right? Like it or not. I mean, I don't like it, but that's the way it is. So like you said, you got to hope you put yourself in the right position and peak at the right time and stay healthy for the love of God.
Yeah, talking about staying healthy, I really want, because we started conference play with USF, and I want to kind of put the notion out there that USF is like a dark reflection of what UCF is going right now, because you look at the injuries that UCF is going through right now. They have lost some of their best hitters with Nick Romano and Alex Freeland. They have lost Hunter Pattison for the year, and Connor Stain has been kind of it's been hindered. You look at USF, and they also have injury issues as well, with injuries in their bullpen. Their ace pitcher, Jack Jasiak, He had a non-specified upper extremity injury right before the first UCF series, and now I recently read on the Oracle that with an article about USF's injury problems that Josiah is out for the season. And then Drew Brutcher, who was one of their best hitters in the first series. We did stop him very well. UCF did stop him very well, but he's still a very good hitter for the program. He still leads them in home runs. He was going to be out for a month starting on April 14th with a unspecified lower body injury. So USF has been going through injury problems of its own. And you look at where they are in the conference standings right now. In my opinion, it really speaks to how well we've been able to recover from the injuries that we've had and still be able to compete for the conference regular season title, while USF is going through similar injury struggles and they're at the bottom of the barrel.
Well, let's hope they stay injured for the rest of the year, right, Drew? We need USF to stay injured for the rest of the year. That's okay. We're fine with that.
We need all the help we can get.
What are you doing reading the Oracle, by the way? What are you doing?
I just wanted to see if Jack Josiah was going to play because Jack Josiah is a good pitcher. He's a good pitcher, Eric. He's a good.
I mean, if you're a glutton for punishment,
they won the conference tournament last season.
If you're a glutton for punishment, I have plenty of other places you could go to make your eyes bleed. But come on, man.
It was just the one article. I was just trying to find updates on the injuries, and I did.
I'm never gonna fault anybody for doing a little extra research outside, wherever they need to be. But the story for UCF against USF in Tampa again, Friday 6:30, Saturday 2 Sunday 1 on ESPN
you
Plus.
Taking the family there, Drew?
No. I'd rather go to some minor league baseball that's like 10 minutes away.
Wow.
Plus, don't forget number two Miami on Wednesday at 6. I mean, especially considering that UCF beat Miami earlier in the season. You get that win on the road, and that's huge. I mean, we'll see what happens, but oh man, I would love to win that game.
I'd rather sweep USF and drop the Miami game.
Well, at gunpoint, yeah. I mean, it's
because the conference standings are going to matter. I mean, the Miami game, it's not going to matter in the landscape of things. The conference sweep, a sweep over USF at this point would help you in the conference race because you're going to have to. I think East Carolina somehow Cliff Godwin's figured it out. They've been a different team since they arrived here at UCF and took it to us. I think they're still the team to beat.
That game, the Miami game, is also on AACC Network Extra, which is also part of the ESPN online stream. Is that available up here?
It is.
Yes.
Now, and this is important for a lot of people here. Because a lot of people obviously by now that are following baseball and softball log into ESPN Plus. You got to make sure when you watch a game like on ACC Network Extra, you have to have a different login. It's usually with your cable provider. It's different than ESPN.
It's a good point.
And I know because I get messages about this when UCF softball is playing Florida. It's confusing. I hope ESPN figures this out eventually where they can just log in, one login. But ESPN Plus login is separate than logging into SEC Network or ACC Network. You have to have your cable provider, or I guess maybe, Jeff, you could speak to this. If you have YouTube, there's a way you could do it as well. But basically, it's a separate login. So in other words, if you try to log in under your ESPN Plus login, it will not work.
Yeah, if you're okay, so here's how this works. If you're a Spectrum customer, the app checks whether or not you're or another like coaxial cable company, right? It checks whether or not you're subscribed to them rather than using your ESPN Plus login. It's like you have to access it through your login with your TV provider. If you are a cord cutter like me and you use either like Hulu TV or TV Plus, I should say, or YouTube TV, ESPN's app automatically checks your subscription status with that TV provider. You just tell them what your TV provider, they automatically go check it, and then it's seamless. It's much more seamless if you're a cord cutter than if you're a regular cable subscriber. So
I mean, that's probably the point, I think.
Yeah, yes, that is exactly.
All right with that, Drew. Drew looks like stunned right now. He's stunned by this development.
It's TV. What are you gonna do?
It's TV. Right. I mean, I've got ESPN Plus. I use my dad's ESPN account. I'm all covered.
No. using somebody else's login, I'm shocked.
He lives 2 minutes away.
Who would do such a thing?
Here come the Netflix police. They're coming for you, Drew. All right.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole nother monster right there.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of a whole other monster, when we get back, we're going to talk NFL draft when we return. 5 Knights have landed with NFL teams. One of them got their name picked in the draft. We'll quickly go over that. Some big stories on conference movement and also some basketball stories that we wanted to get to as well in a little bit. Stick around. Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate. Then get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez here with you, along with Andrew Glukov and Bryson Turner. Follow us at UCF Banneret _SBN on Twitter. That's where you can follow all the latest content that we have for you about UCF, including NFL Draft Wrap. All right, so we previewed it earlier, but the situation was for UCF the year after we set a school record with 5 NFL draft picks. UCF gets only 1 NFL draft pick this year, but it is the 6th consecutive year that UCF sees at least 1 player taken, and that was Kalia Davis in the 6th round, pick number 220, going to the San Francisco 49ers. Davis, who looked really good at the start of last year, then got hurt. Of course, remember he opted out due to COVID in 2020. Has a bit of an uphill climb, Drew, to make this roster, I think, because, the Niners are pretty strong defensively up front. What do you think is the situation for Kalia out in Santa Clara?
Well, we know Kalia Davis is still in recovery mode, still working on getting back to 100%. He didn't do everything during his pro day.
And several guys, including our buddy Rini Angolia, forgive me, Drew, they had said that he would have been day 2 had it not been for that injury.
Multiple analysts, ESPN, NFL Network, all said the same thing. He would have been a day 2 guy, potentially 2nd round, if he was at 100%, obviously. And the Niners know this. The Niners got a steal. This was a big steal, getting him as late as they did. I think based on talent alone, his trajectory, he should be back to 100% by the time fall camp starts. And I expect him to make the roster. May not be as be as a fringe guy on the defensive line as he kind of works his way in. But I mean, Davis is great physically. He has good pursuit. He's able to shed blocks really well. I mean, his highlight reel is fantastic, and people buzz about him. And NFL draftniks buzz about him. There's a reason why. He's by far, out of all the guys involved, with the 4 undrafted free agents, he's the one who's got the best chance of latching onto the roster. He fits in San Francisco. It's a good organization to be with, and I think the cards are really in his favor.
Yeah, 4 other guys were picked as picked up as undrafted free agents. Cole Schneider to the Green Bay Packers to help out Aaron Rodgers, hopefully up front. Big Cat Bryant signed with the Dallas Cowboys. Brandon Johnson went to the Denver Broncos, and Marcus Tatum, offensive lineman, to the Jacksonville Jaguars to hopefully earn a spot in front, protecting Trevor Lawrence. Of those 4, Drew, who do you think has the best shot to latch on?
I actually think it's Cole Schneider. Marcus Tatum, has been up and down in his time at UCF since he transferred over. Cole Schneider brings versatility, and we saw this with Justin McCray. It may have taken a little bit of time for him to kind of latch on, but his versatility is what made him valuable in the league. He's played with multiple teams, has had to play 3 to 4 different positions on the line, and was able to be serviceable in all of them. That's something that Cole Schneider brings to the table. He's an offensive guard by nature, but he can play center. He has that skill and experience. That's valuable, especially when offensive linemen go down. More nowadays we see ACL tears and everything just because bodies are getting bigger and stronger. Ligaments don't. They don't change. And we're not meant to torque the way that we do and move the way that we do. And so you're seeing more of these injuries. So you need that versatile guy who can basically work as two guys for the price of one. I think he's got the best chance of latching on. On the flip side, I think the guy who has the worst chance of latching on, some people may disagree with me, is Big Cat Bryant. He's not sized correctly. He's too small to be a defensive end. He's not a linebacker. So you're going to have to find a way to kind of – he's stuck in like the tween zone.
He's big. He's 6'5", but 245. So it's like, where do you want to end
up? But
up?
he's not big enough.
Well, I think the main issue there is where he got picked up at Dallas. Like, that team is stacked defensively. They've got
I was a little
number of guys.
I was a little surprised that Dallas picked him up. The thing is, with the undrafted free agents, you get 4 or 5 offers and you pick the one that's best for you. So I'm a little surprised this match ever happened. Dallas doesn't need him. Brandon Johnson has a better chance of fitting in Denver than Big Cat does in Dallas.
He's now Brandon. I think is a guy who has a much better shot than people think in Denver. Russell Wilson's in Denver now. I thought that Denver's wide receiver core last year was pretty weak. I think what is underappreciated for Brandon is the fact that, remember, his dad, Charles, longtime MLB catcher, right? Okay, not an NFL player, obviously MLB, but understands what you have to do at the professional level in order to get better, right? That sort of that institutional knowledge is valuable. I really think it is valuable. Plus the connection with Russell Wilson being a former baseball player too. But so I like where Brandon landed in Denver, and I would not be surprised to see him latch on that roster.
I think he has a great opportunity as well to latch on. You're right about the wide receiver core. The front end isn't bad. You have Cortland Sutton, Jared Jeudy, and Tim Patrick. That's not
but then that's it.
Line. And then you got just some guys, Montrell Washington, Kendall Hinton. That's nothing. That there's no depth there. So there's an opportunity there for him to kind of break in. The problem with Brandon Johnson is he's not a burner by any stretch of the imagination. He doesn't have great speed. What he does have is a good head on his shoulders and good hands.
Yeah,
I mean, he's definitely screens possession receiver. He can take a hit. That's kind of the one.
He's a touchdown machine.
That comes back also with field awareness. He knows how to get into the end zone and make tough catches. I mean, he made some really tough catches last year, keeping his feet in bounds. Obviously, now NFL is 2 feet versus 1, but still, there were some tough catches in there that he was able to pull in and get a score. So that
I think about that one that he had against USF. That was a big play where there were several times where he really helped Mikey Keene out in terms of his. It was almost like, I mean, I don't want to get too far here, but it's kind of like Chris Carter-esque, how he, his field awareness, like you were talking about, and being able to get his feet in bounds. That diving catch he made against USF, he got 2 feet in on that one. I was like, that one's good on Sundays.
And it comes from the receiver and the quarterback. The quarterback knows if you're going to throw a ball, put it where only the receiver can get it. If he can't get it, no one can get it. So you get those sideline passes. And you have the trust in Brandon Johnson with his hands and field awareness. He's going to make that catch. And he did it on multiple occasions. That's where he's going to be valuable, is making those type of catches. His problem is speed. He doesn't have it. And that could play against him when you're dealing with the NFL and big guys, and stronger and faster guys. But, he may be able to match up well in the slot against a linebacker. That may be where his niche is. And, he does have a chance to impress and latch on.
Yeah, he's not a slot guy. He's an outside guy. So we'll keep an eye on those 4 guys as they fight for their way for a roster spot, as well as Kalia, see how his recovery's going. Kalia's been great on social media, like really, keeping everybody updated on it. And I love when he posts up there. And the other thing that is underappreciated, hey, he's going out to the Valley. A streamer himself, right? So. Oh
yeah, he's a streamer. He writes his own newsletter. I mean,
his newsletter is great. Like I loved reading his newsletter. He's fantastic. He gets it off the field. So
during the off season, you need to bring him on here, have him like as a guest contributor.
Yeah. So, all right, let's move over to some bigger news that was afoot earlier this week, which will enable us to speculate recklessly, which is one of our favorite things to do. So, some conference stuff to discuss. The word came out. I think it was Brett McMurphy. He wasn't the first one to report it, was he? I forget.
He was.
Oh, he was. Okay, so
John Rothstein reported all.
Well, Rothstein.
No,
well, that was
no,
we talked about that. We talked about that last week. But Brett McMurphy came out.
Now we have
and
actual
said,
details.
Do we? Because
A
I
little
don't
bit
think we have any more new details than we did last week. I think everybody's full of crap right now. But go ahead.
Well, there's a couple things that we do need to talk about here. Is that the settlement that UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati are negotiating, according to McMurphy, is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $17 to $20 million each. Mike Oresco was initially trying to get as much as $35 million from each of those teams, but they look to have brought that down. And there's also that will have a domino effect on the teams that are coming into the American. But I think this is much more in line, Eric, with what we were thinking would happen with in terms of the buyout. Because remember, the UConn buyout was $17 million. So, and they were able to, and they had a much shorter lead time. Right, they left. I think well short of the 27 months.
Yeah.
I forget exactly. I think they might have only given 12 months. But now with UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston sort of approaching a financial settlement, this looks like it could be approaching the end. Don't you think?
Yeah, just announce it already. Stop with the going through media people and trying to get every nickel here.
Well, wait a second, Eric. Who would be going through media people?
All the parties involved.
Something to keep in mind is, you have to expect that what happened in Conference USA with Southern Miss, Marshall, Ultimate played a role in this.
I agree.
As we found out,
explain to the audience for what you're talking about, because that was a significant moment there. I do.
Basically, the rule within the bylaws of Conference USA said they had to give a certain amount of weighting, much like the American says 27 months. You have to give a 27-month notice. Otherwise, you negotiate outside of the bylaws to some sort of settlement. Well, Conference USA tried to hold that line against these schools while the schools tried to negotiate a financial settlement. So you had this impasse, and it went to court. And Conference USA got torched by it because it was causing material injury to these universities. So, Marshall files a lawsuit in West Virginia. West Virginia's going to back Marshall because it's a school within their state that's being materially injured by being stuck in Conference USA for an extra year when they don't want to be. So they went back to the table. They negotiated a buyout, and Marshall, Old Dominion, and Southern Miss are joined the Sun Belt as of 2022 versus 2023. That had to have played a role in this because, the idea of coming down from 35 million all the way almost down to 17 of what UConn paid a few years ago, that's huge. So, there has to be some hardball being played here. That's one reason why it's taken so long for this negotiation to it's not even done yet.
One thing that we think might be playing into that, Drew, and Matt Burchell of the Orlando Sentinel came out this week and said that the $17 to $20 million settlement, okay, fine, but this is according to Matt Burchell. A source told the Orlando Sentinel that negotiations are ongoing and the reported exit figures aren't close to what are being discussed at this time.
Yeah,
this is called the media war is going on where the media is being used as mouthpieces for different parties to say different things. Obviously, that sounds like a pro-American Athletic Conference position where, oh no, those numbers aren't right. We're not done yet.
Wonder who that might have been.
Well, here's
McMurphy, who definitely comes off as from the school standpoint, where the school's like, yeah, this is kind of where it's going to end up being. So you're seeing. Right. You're seeing the media used as the mouthpiece for the two sides to fight each other, and it's kind of bringing it out to the public.
And here's what's probably going to end up happening: they'll probably end up making a deal, and it'll probably be something like $22 million. So basically, all parties were right. It's around 17 to 20. No, it's way more than that. Oh, it's $22 million. Wow. See, that's how this all stuff works out. Or it could be lower. Who knows?
I don't think it's going to be lower. There's precedent already set with UConn. There's no way it's going to be lower. The dollar values have changed. Right. The amount of material injury to the American is way more substantive now than it was when UConn left. So I can't see it going below 17.
And by the way, I wouldn't read too much in any of this. I think it's going as planned. Everybody wants to make a deal. I don't think this is as petty. This is not a petty situation like the Big 12 is being petty.
Are you sure about that?
I have to agree with Eric on this. If this was truly petty, you would have seen a lot more venom coming out.
Correct.
This has all been back, in the back channels, and it's only now because they're near the finish line. They really are, and it's going to be done very soon. They're running out of time anyway. This is going to happen soon, and they're getting pretty close. They've whittled things down.
Yeah. I think this has been handled well by all parties. In all honesty,
not as well as it can be.
Yes,
obviously, teams leaving is never a fun thing. And I think Oresco made some off-putting comments of basically like, hey, we don't have to negotiate the kind of comments. He put that out in the public. I think that was not very wise. But for the most part, outside of that, I think things have kind of progressed about as well as can be expected. And with this news coming out now that the expectation is it's going to get wrapped up and it's going to be for 2023, now Conference USA and America and the Americans moves can start actually being fully, because Conference USA was kind of left in a holding pattern because the American wasn't going to bring in these new schools until they can solve the issues with the old schools. So now I think it's all going to start coming together really quickly. 2023 is going to be the date. And the dollars are going to be probably within 5 million of what that range is. I think it may be a little bit higher, like you said, to kind of satisfy everyone, but I think it's not going to be much different. And we've already seen news about affiliated moves.
We'll get to that in a second, by the way. Yeah, but I do have one question though, Drew, that I did want to get. Forgive me interrupting, but I think this is important. Carnett Evans reached out on Twitter and said, we're getting ripped off. No way UCF should be paying anywhere near this much to leave 5 months early. Take this to court and save the money. The precedent was set by Louisville and Rutgers. And Eric, I'm going to allow you to sound off on this as well.
I already got to cut that one off because, that's apples and oranges. That's a separate contract.
Okay, well, here's his point, and I agree with you guys on this. He said for 12 months notice, somebody said, hey, this is UConn had to pay $17 million. That's the precedent. He said for 12 months notice, we give it 22. UL and Rutgers paid $11 million for 20 months notice. I replied to him saying the AAC is in a much stronger negotiating position now with its current media deal than it was in 2013.
Not only that, but at the time the buyout was $5 million for the Big East.
Right.
They didn't have. So you're talking very apples and oranges situation here. The buyout was $5 million. It was agreed later to turn into 10 because we already knew when the American formed and became solid, Rutgers and Louisville were already on the way out. They were 1-year rentals. That was part of the agreement. Mm-hmm. So they were already on the way out. They were under an old contract. That's why $11 million it's more than double of what the original buyout was. And they tried to push the $10 million before all the Big East fell apart, and it was shot down because those schools knew they were leaving. Like the Pittsburgh, the Syracuse, the West Virginia, they all knew they were on their way out. So it's not a fair comparison. Let's go to the UConn part. 1, UConn is one school. 2, outside of women's basketball, they're not a heavy valued commodity. So
especially especially in the sport that has the most value.
Exactly. In fact, in football, they were dead weight, and that's been nice because it's really an insult to things that are dead weights. The truth is, other than that, there really wasn't much value at that point. Also, the value of the conference keeps moving up. We talk about the media deal. It's a backloaded deal. So the first payout was like in the 5s, and it's moving to the 6s, and it's moving to the 7s. And eventually, by the time this media deal ends, it's going to be a payout of like $10 million per school.
Right.
And that's because it's backloaded. And now the average comes out to around 7-ish, but it's not all 7 flat across the board. So now you're paying for the loss of future revenues that these schools would have brought in through their productivity to NCAA units from the tournaments, the bowl money from their football
CFP
successes.
payouts, quite possibly, or I should say New Year's Six bowl payouts, etc.
Yeah, either or both or whatever, depending on how various years play out. We've already seen them crack the CFP ceiling, so we know it can be done, even though it takes a miracle and a half to get there. So you have to take those things into consideration. Also, money, everything's becoming more expensive. So buyouts are becoming more expensive. Even though they're giving that extra time, it's still, there's a 1 season, like lame duck year. It's going to be the entire academic year. So the difference between getting it done now and done June 30th is the fact that it just makes it easier for the schools coming in to get their stuff done. I think 17 is actually, that's your ground level. I think 17 to 20 is very fair considering how successful these 3 schools have been for the conference.
Yeah, I think his contention is the center point of his contention was the American quote. Here, the AAC loses nothing in the TV deal, so why the extra $6 million plus in quote damages end quote.
And to that, I think those mentions.
That's just not it.
Well,
sorry,
they got lucky. They made
a good bet.
Well, ESPN did not slash their contract apart. They thought about it. They didn't. And I think that's why I think CUSA schools and CUSA schools only were picked and no Sunbelt schools were touched. I think that was part of the deal.
Yeah, because they would have pulled if you're pulling a Sunbelt school, you're pulling a fellow ESPN school.
Well, and look what's happened. Now look what's happened between the Sunbelt and the America. They pretty much have killed off Conference USA.
Conference USA, we're going to get into a little bit as to at least 2 sports that are dead now in Conference USA. But to kind of put a bow on this, they're not taking into effect, the NCAA tournament units that Houston has brought that will bring in, or the New Year's Six money that UCF or Cincinnati or even Houston will bring in. Because I guarantee you, if you stretch this out and they stayed in the American, one of those 3 schools in the near future of that current media deal will make the New Year's Six. I mean, I'd say it's guaranteed. The American is the strongest conference at this juncture in football, and those programs have all shown the ability to get there and compete.
Yeah.
Cincinnati lost both their games. They lost to Georgia at the very end, but they competed. That's good for the conference.
They should have won that game.
They should have won that game.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. The truth is they still get paid out the same regardless of the win. And by showing a level of legitimacy, it's partly what brought them to the Big 12. The Americans losing all of that. They're losing it all. So they're like, well, we want financial compensation. Do you know how much the old Big East, now American, sold the name and the Madison Square Garden rights to the Catholic 7? It was $100 million. I mean, we're talking, obviously over a stretch of time, but I mean, we're talking massive amount of money was transferred to buy a name. They're
right.
UCF, Houston,
spread over time, though.
Over time. UCF, Cincinnati, Houston build up the American name. You take them away, the American name is now less valuable, and they're like, well, we want compensation for that.
Well,
okay,
right.
Okay.
Right. By the way, a couple
Eric.
things also. Mark Daniels told this to Mike Bianchi on the bridge on 96.9. The Big 12 has told the members, if you need help, we'll help you by taking money from future revenue TV deals and like there. In other words, the Big 12 will chip in to get them out. So
and this is not unprecedented. They did it with West Virginia.
Exactly.
Interesting.
That's
West
Are they chipping in? Are they chipping in to help Oklahoma get out? Nope.
I still think that's going to work itself out. But the second part is, and I always love when the ripoff. All these parties have lawyers, and I'm going to say lawyers that are not cheap. I would trust them what they're doing. Put it to that way. All right. So settle
most
down.
Powerful force in college sports is billable hours.
I'm pretty confident.
Win or lose, the lawyers still win.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm pretty confident that these people are being, they're being advised. And if they're saying 17 million is probably fine. I think Drew did a good job of breaking down why that's a fair deal for all parties. So we'll just move on.
All right. So, we're not going to move on just yet from this really interesting topic that we all nerd out about. In addition to the rest of everything, the American announced this week that they are getting some affiliate members in men's soccer and swimming and diving. We're going to avoid swimming and diving because it doesn't matter to UCF, but UAB, Charlotte, FAU, and FIU have all announced that they are joining the American for men's soccer early, which goes back to what we were hinting at earlier, which effectively is the death knell of Conference USA men's soccer.
Those are the four remaining schools.
Those are the four remaining schools.
Functioning conference with four schools.
That's over. And Bryson, we talked about this before. Like this sets up a situation. We'll get to that in a second. This sets up a situation where UCF, at least for the moment, is going to be in a conference for men's soccer with three other schools that live in the state of Florida, plus Charlotte, who was quite good last year, and UAB, who's another southeastern school. So this is a pretty interesting moment right now for UCF in terms of where the competition in men's soccer.
Oh, yes, very much so. Charlotte, of course, I looked at the RPI. Charlotte was 47, very respectable job there. But UAB, Charlotte, and FAU were already scheduled to join the American. I think the big one is that FIU is the one that moved, and the fact that FIU moved in both sports as well, with men's soccer and women and swing and diving. The fact that they moved and they're still a full Conference USA member is the indication that those sports are dead in Conference USA. And on that note, I would keep an eye on men's tennis and beach volleyball, because it looks like those sports could potentially be in danger for Conference USA as well. But I digress. So, but FIU joining the American is huge for that, because FIU finished 22 in the men's soccer RPI. Very well respected men's
Remember,
soccer
Scott Calabrese was the head coach at FIU before coming to UCF too.
Yes, exactly. And I said that, that it would be great if UCF men's soccer ended up being in the same conference as FIU, because once they made the killing blow on Conference USA, I'm like, oh man, FIU men's soccer has to find a new home. Scott Carr better get Terry Mahajer on the phone right now. And so it should be now that FIU has moved to the American, now it'll be very interesting to see, because obviously when we've been talking about these exit negotiations with UCF and the American, how much is that going to affect men's soccer? And it's going to be very interesting. The good news is I think that no matter what happens, I think UCF men's soccer will be fine. Either we stay in the American and it's still very respectable competition, very great competition, great rivalries, especially with SMU. And we have three in-state schools with us, USF, FIU, and FAU. Saves on travel. Awesome. It's either that or the alternative option, if the bridge has been burned in men's soccer, which who knows? It depends on how the negotiations end up and if that's been used as a bargaining chip or not. Or you could end up in the Sun Belt, who is an equally as good competition wise, and you'd be joining with your future conference buddy, West Virginia. So I would
argue the Sun Belt is actually a better.
You have Marshall, who has a recent national championship. Yep. I agree. The Sun Belt's actually a stronger conference.
JMU's good, Old Dominion's good, Coastal's good, Georgia Southern, Georgia State are actually on the way up.
Plus, a lot of crappy cities there to go, I'll tell you.
It's not about the cities, it's about
the players. It's not about the cities, it's about the competition. Here's the other thing that's
joining the Big 12. I mean, we're not talking about great, huge cities.
Well, here's the key, though, that
the
Sun
Belt. Lubbock there, Drew. You don't love Lubbock, Texas, and Manhattan.
Well,
you got the Little Apple.
Well, here's the thing that the Sun Belt, has done, and I think if you're UCF, you kind of got to pay attention to this. The Sun Belt, two things. Number one, the Sun Belt has kind of marketed itself as the home for Power 5 men's soccer schools that don't have a conference home. All the Power 5 schools that were in they were in Conference USA. All the Power 5 conference schools that are in conferences that don't sponsor men's soccer are now in the Sun Belt. So that's Kentucky, South Carolina, West Virginia. UCF would be joining that club. Okay? Now, the other thing, and this is where I think the American, I think this is one of the things that, that Terry Mohajir is really kind of thinking about here, and I think this has to be a consideration. When the American made that decision, Eric Lopez, to remove the conference tournaments, the bidded conference tournaments, from the 3 schools that were leaving, Houston was going to host track and field. They're not anymore. I don't know if Cincinnati was hosting anything, but UCF was scheduled to host softball because they were leaving the conference. That, I think, left a really bad taste in everybody's mouth because Cincinnati aside, that stunt with the flag at the football game was really stupid.
Yeah.
But everything else aside, UCF in particular and Houston have been very good soldiers for the American throughout this entire process.
Houston either. Houston's done some.
What did Houston do? Did their team run out of the tunnel with a Big 12 flag while they were the member of another conference? No, they didn't.
No, but they already have the Big 12 logo up, and they took down the American in all their places right as soon as it was announced. They already
like in all their facilities.
Yes.
Okay.
So. Look,
all right, fair enough. But what I'm saying is the American has done itself no favors with that. And if you're UCF and you're the only school that's staying in the American for anything, what's the likelihood if now men's soccer again the postseason tournament is determined by
it's
hosted by the top seed. But if they move to a bidded format where schools bid out, what's the likelihood that UCF is going to win a bid?
I will say this. I don't think soccer's dumb enough to go that route. I actually think softball's to blame. The coaches screwed this up. There should not be predetermined sites for conference tournaments. It should go to the regular season champion if you're going to do a conference tournament. Soccer actually has it the best way, so credit to them on that because they could avoid nonsense like this. I think the bigger question is, and we'll get more into this down the road, is what is the future of men's soccer as a whole? And I'm not talking about UCF. I'm talking about it as a sport because I think there's going to be casualties when this.
Well, there already happened. Cincinnati killed.
And I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see more. And it's funny you're saying about the Sun Belt. You're right. It's turning into football. And basically the power conferences, and then everybody gets separated. So I think if you're UCF, you have to watch that more closely and see where you're most comfortable fit from that standpoint. You don't want to be on the wrong side of this battle that's going on in men's soccer because men's soccer is changing before our very eyes as a sport. And there's going to be a ton of programs that will fold because of this moving forward. There will be
that's why I think. Well, that's why
athletics that will have a bigger loss than men's soccer.
Well, that's why I think the 21st century model I actually think is kind of part and parcel with that because, if you can move men's soccer to a year-round sport, that'll at least get some more eyeballs on it. I think, you're trying to be, it does, but I think that the problem is, what is MLS going to do? Are they going to move to more of a European model?
Right. There's so many questions.
Where you have more academies and stuff like Orlando City has an academy.
Right.
Which is playing only, but I don't know. It's a real turbulent time. I do think you're right about that, Eric. Go ahead, Bryson. You had a question?
Yes. So I wanted to reference because remember, Jeff, back in early November, we posted an article about where men's soccer, like the options for men's soccer to go to, and back then the Sun Belt they hadn't even announced that they were bringing men's soccer back yet at that point. And we talked about how, you have Marshall, Georgia State, James Madison, Coastal Georgia, Old Dominion. And you mentioned one of the cons of that choice, because I remember you mentioning this with that, is the lack of brands in that group. Do you think that that's the Sun Belt's addition of those Power 5 schools that like Kentucky, West Virginia, and South Carolina? Do you think that helps address that? Because if that was like the con you had for that, did that move address that issue for you?
No question. No question. When you add 2 SEC schools, South Carolina and Kentucky, plus West Virginia, which is kind of bounced around a little bit. They were in the MAC in men's soccer. Those are Power 5 schools. Those are the brands those brands actually do help raise the profile of the Sun Belt Conference. Not to mention the competition level. Drew, you look like you're about to say
I was going to say they're also former conference mates of UCF soccer.
Right, in Conference USA. Although West Virginia wasn't in Conference USA when UCF
South Carolina
and Kentucky were. Yeah.
And I think I agree about the brand value. Marshall has a national championship, but if you're not a men's soccer fan, would you even notice? However, you notice Kentucky and South Carolina, they're SEC schools. Enough said. You don't have to be an avid fan to know the value that brings. On the flip side, it'd be more economical for UCF to stay in the American because you got all that in-state stuff. So you've got pros and cons to each side, and I actually want to pivot a little bit on this because I had to deal with some questions on Twitter. There was one fan complaining. Yeah, I know, shocking. Someone complaining on Twitter about how it's not
the Leroy Jenkins of UCF Twitter strikes again.
Leroy Jenkins. But no, this was actually a valid point that had to be addressed, where it was said that it was not fair and hypocritical that the American was being so open about bringing these affiliate schools in for 2022, yet the negotiations are still ongoing for the 3 schools leaving. And I said that's not a fair comparison. Affiliate schools could be here today and gone tomorrow. It's basically like, yeah, we'll let you hang out with us, but affiliate schools come and go. They do, and it's
plus those affiliate schools are going to be full members in due time.
Well, 3 of the 4.
3 of the 4. 3 of the 4. And part of the reason why it's being done early is they have no home. The conference doesn't offer men's soccer anymore because they don't have enough members. So it's not like,
what's the issue with that? So what's the issue with that? Like, why would anybody have a problem?
They were complaining about, it's hypocritical that they're bringing them in so quickly, yet there's still ongoing negotiations with the exiting 3. One thing is you're talking about an affiliate membership versus a full member, which has different rules and bylaws and stuff.
Well, especially in men's soccer, which is such a wild sport when it comes to that.
Affiliate
Wild West, man.
Yeah, the affiliate membership basically gives you a house to live in, but it's not going to give you a salary. Whereas a full member, you get money, you get real money. So
you're basically renting the couch.
Yeah, you're living on the couch and eating all your roommates' food.
The biggest story, by the way, we're focused so much on the future. Who knows what the future men's soccer right now? Who knows?
Well, this is today. This is what's going on now.
I think we need to bring this up though. And this has kind of gotten lost here. With these members joining this year, the American just got a lot stronger men's soccer this year.
Yeah,
it did.
No question. Question.
So that and the scheduling will be fascinating. I'm already gonna be fascinated. How do they come up with the schedule? What's going to be the conference tournament format? Because remember, Jeff, they've been doing 14 tournaments.
14 tournament.
Do they stay?
Now you've got enough for an 8.
Do they expand? Right.
You have enough room for 8.
What do they do? Right. So this short term, what we do know is they're going to play this year, and that's going to be fascinating.
And by the way, listen, we were talking about hosting. It's a lot easier to determine the host of the conference tournament in the regular season when you're only bringing 4 teams in. If you expand it to 6 or 8, that's a lot of hotel rooms you got to buy, right? And on short notice, when your conference tournament could start 4 or 5 days after you've determined who the number 1 seed is.
That's tough logistics.
That's real, right? That's underrated in terms of logistics, right? They may very well move it to a bidded system. Go ahead, Eric.
They would, but that would be unnecessary because
I don't think that's true.
I'm going to tell you why. Somebody who's traveled all over the country in softball tournaments, we're overrating how many people are actually going to travel. You know who's traveling? Parents. And you know what? They're used to traveling on short notice. Trust me. We're not packing the place.
I'm not talking about parents, though, Eric. I'm talking about teams.
That's fine, but you can get 6 hotels in one city in a week's notice. Trust me, you could do it.
It depends on the city, really.
Are you sure? Are you sure about that?
Yeah, if you pick the right city.
It really depends. Because Drew makes a good point. It depends on the city. Sure, UCF could probably handle it in Orlando. We have more hotel rooms than God. But let's think about some other schools in the American that might have to do that, right?
I mean, most of them are metropolitan universities,
right?
Which helps. However,
how about Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Are you talking about being near the school, or are you talking about being 20 miles from the school? I mean, not every school is really built for this, especially on short notice. I could see both points on this.
It's real simple.
Even
a place like Philly, it could get messy. Go ahead.
It's hard to change the system in a 1 year window. From 21 to 22, you just announced that these schools are all joining as of May 4th, and so now you got to create a whole new system in a very short time, and so you're going to have to work on those logistics in a very short time window.
Most of the schools can do it, and the ones they can't, it's real simple. They don't host. You pass. Sorry, move on.
Well, it's either you
coaches
do a
aren't going to like that,
or it's
coaches
the number
can
one
stick
seed.
it. All right, I'm sick of coaches.
Coaches,
I need to stop it, because you know what? It should be about on the field and not some stupid week. All right, the regular season title should matter, and when you do predetermined sites, you're basically making the regular season irrelevant.
Well, I won't argue that. I won't argue that. But if they can't host it, they pass. No, you're number one seed. That's.
But you're saying, what if they can't do the logistics? Well, that's too bad. Well, then they don't host.
You got to find a workable solution.
You can figure it out.
Boy, you've never been a director of ops. Then I'll tell you that.
Listen, wait. Do you really think? Let me ask you something. I could tell you for the last month in softball, UCF and Wichita State were going to be the top 2 teams. You're telling me you couldn't start planning? Let me ask you this. UCF and softball could host. They're going to take 5 days. They're going to have a ton of hotels in a week in a regional. They can figure it out, can't they? Why is that any different for a conference tournament when you can actually have more time?
Eric, that's not the reality. You knew coming into this.
No. I think it's
Wichita State was going to host, or ECU was going to host the softball tournament.
Look at baseball.
That.
You have a massive log jam in baseball.
Right, but
I think that's a better example. It's not a 2-horse race here. It's a log jam.
By the way, you're also conveniently leaving out the fact that you might have some other events going on in your city too, such as football and a women's soccer tournament as well.
But here's the point.
We're not in a vacuum. This is not a vacuum.
Here's the point. But here's the point. We're gonna have selection Sundays. 16 schools get to host. It's a quick turnaround. You don't know if you're gonna host. What if you host and you find out on selection Sunday?
That's the NCAA, man.
You put a bit. The point is you plan ahead, and all these schools and conferences can plan ahead.
Those are 4 teams.
You're acting like everybody's going blindly. You're acting like teams are going to go blind.
Eric. Drew makes another good point there that proves you wrong. That every bracket in the NCAA, that's a 4-team setup. We're talking about 8 teams.
Who says you got 7? You got 7 that you have to hold up somewhere.
Who says
as opposed to 3? You're more
Here's
than
a better
doubling.
idea. I got a solution then. Don't do a conference tournament then if it's such a problem. Don't do it.
Yeah, well, I mean,
you could go the volleyball way. You could. That actually is a viable solution.
And I'll defend the school conferences and coaches in this. A lot of them are forced to do it because television wants it. Like volleyball is lucky. Nobody cares. But
money.
Nobody cares in volleyball because there's no TV slots during conference tournaments in volleyball. There's this thing called football that kind of dominates that time period. Yeah, I've heard it's pretty popular. But like, for example, softball and baseball draw big numbers in tournaments. Like the conference tournament, the SEC tournament.
By the way, if they move men's soccer to the spring, guess what? You're going to get bigger TV numbers.
I disagree with that.
I don't, because you're not fighting with football.
No,
but you're fighting. Crowd. Remember, Eric. It's a different crowd. A softball fan may not necessarily be a soccer fan, and vice versa. There are soccer exclusive fans
right.
out
But
there.
my point, I think we saw this. The problem that soccer yes, if they get to the spring, they'll probably get a better time slot. Maybe.
Would it be a big change? Maybe not. But I mean, they would
very
still
minimal,
getting away
very
from football.
minimal, because the time slots are going to be, for example, like soccer, you have the NHL playoffs, the NBA, you have softball, baseball, all of that's going to have priority over soccer. Heck, beach volleyball has priority over soccer in the spring. So you better be careful about that if you're soccer, unless you're willing to. And then, like, you can't end your season in March because that's called March Madness. You have basketball. There's a lot of traffic.
Well, the 21st century model, they don't have it ending in March.
When do they have it ended at?
I'm going to look that up real quick.
Because either way, if you go in March, you got March Madness basketball.
No, you can't have it end in March. You'd have to end it in April, which you pivot just a little bit, and as far as your season, but April
they would actually have the conference regular season would be from mid-March to late April, with the postseason starting late April and going through May.
Yeah, that's a mistake because you're not going to get any slots there. That's NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, softball NCAA tournament, baseball postseason around the corner. Oh, by the way, you got Major League Baseball going on. You got racing going on. NFL draft. There's a lot of TV. Like, you're probably going to be on ESPN.
No one
News.
watches racing.
Beg to differ. Unfortunately, they do. But anyway, we'll see.
That's the model that they're looking at, which we'll get to. But I'll tell you the truth. I think that
hopefully we have enough actual soccer schools to have a tournament. How about that? Let's focus. Let's hope.
Well,
let's hope there's not enough cash.
It looks like that was going to happen. I just don't think the story's done yet. I mean, I think
wouldn't you do women's soccer the same way? You move it just and
basically not
women's
necessarily. From what I've been hearing, women's soccer would like the men to sort of be the guinea pigs for this model,
and they have more power.
And we'll let you guys figure that out, see how it goes, and then if we like it, we'll do something maybe slightly different or maybe the same. We don't know.
Just like basketball, women will follow the men. That's what happened in basketball. The women followed the men when it came to the March Madness and women's just went to 68 in basketball because they saw what the men did. So
it's not that they saw what the men did, is that they got raked through the coals of inequality. I mean, come on, you can't be serious and say, oh, they're just following the men. No, that's a crock of crap. That's absolute BS.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
This comes down to the fact that because of how bad the NCAA got destroyed over how the inequality between how they treated the women's tournament versus the men's tournament, and it was really bad.
Well, that's you're talking about the facilities and stuff, but what does that doesn't have anything to do with going to 68.
They're looking at a balanced, identical system. Yeah, it worked for the men, but that's not why they're doing it for the women. It's not that it worked for the men; it's that they got absolutely destroyed. I mean, and they deserved to get destroyed. They deserved every piece of hate and venom that they got for that. This is
it was a total embarrassment. A total embarrassment.
But that doesn't mean you have to go to 68, though.
68 works.
Why?
Why not? I mean,
why?
Heck.
Because there's not enough good women's basketball teams to field 68. I mean, heck, I would argue there's not enough to field 48 right now. Heck, 60. I mean, I just think I'm not a fan that you have to copy everything that the men do. You do what's best for you. Like the thing that softball has done very
this
smartly.
Was the only viable solution, though, and you know it.
To go to 68?
On how the NCAA got destroyed, the only way they could save face on this was to make it identical to the men.
Okay, but then don't complain when nobody pays attention to you.
That's a different argument. That's a different argument.
Because I would rather be different. Be different. Softball's been different than baseball, and that's why it's past college baseball now.
It's a different sport.
Correct.
Yeah, it is. That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
no, but people make the casual person doesn't make that comparison.
Because they're dumb. I mean, come on. Softball and baseball are nothing alike.
With those comments there.
Softball and baseball are nothing alike. The only thing.
And I would argue women's basketball and men's basketball are nothing alike either.
But they play on the same court.
They shouldn't.
But they do, with the same dimensions. I mean, it doesn't
change.
Eric,
is that the hill you want to die on right now?
No, I'm serious. I think women's basketball should play in smaller arenas so you have actually a better atmosphere. Like, I think UCF women's basketball shouldn't be playing. Like, in 50 people.
But the court's still the same size.
Agreed.
It's still the same dimensions. It's the same game. The rules are the same.
Correct.
It's not like baseball and softball, which has different field dimensions, different ball together. Materials are different. Everything's different.
Although I will say women's basketball went to 4 quarters. See, and that was smart. It's made the game quicker. Men's basketball stayed on half. So you don't have to do every single thing that the men's do.
Quarters work.
No, it makes the game seem quicker. It's not actually quicker. The reason why it's quicker is because the commercial breaks are shorter.
It's because the games aren't on CBS Sports.
That's true.
That's fair. All right. We'll keep an eye on this for you as well.
We have a basketball program still, by the way.
Yes, we actually do. And we'll talk about that in
it exists.
That's called the segue, folks.
We'll talk about that when we return from a break here on the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. We'll also have Bryson in to talk a little bit more about tennis and golf as they go through their postseason. Stick around, Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Back after this. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez with you. Drew had to dip out, but we still have Bryson with us here for the final segment. Dan, we're talking kind of grab bag of everything else. I want to talk about basketball real quick. We'll start with the men who announced another transfer in addition to the 2 guys we talked about last week. Lahat Chun has announced that he's coming to UCF. Listed as a junior, a center. He played last at Utah, 6'10", 228. He is he does have Florida ties. He went to Florida Prep. He's originally from Dakar, Senegal, same place that Mbacke Jong is from. And last year for Utah, I just want to pull up his stats here real quick. He averaged 3.8 points to go with 3.5 rebounds in 301 minutes of action. He actually only started 5 games. In the games that he started, he put up double figures in one of them against Arizona. Had 10 points, 2 rebounds. His best game last season, 16 points, 7 rebounds against Manhattan on 4 of 5 shooting. This is another big guy to go with Michael Durr, who's coming in. And Eric, I think that this is you lose Jong due to graduation. You lose Jameel Reynolds as well. He's in the transfer portal and may go to I think was it either Temple or some other place, but South Carolina, yeah. But you could get 2 really solid big men here. Could this be an upgrade?
To be determined. We'll see. I mean, we got to see them on the court. We got to see how they play together on the court. But you're getting bodies, you're getting size. That's always good. Whether they're better or not, that remains to be seen. Mm-hmm. We won't know that until we see them on the court in November. But you got to fill the roster up, and when you find size, that's nothing to sneeze at. So that's the way I would look at it. So at least they've got the front court there upgrade. Addressed.
This guy's played for them. He's played 45 games the last 2 seasons. So let's see, 45 or from 20 and 21, and then he played obviously in 21-22. So I mean, this guy has 3 years under his belt. Like this is not some young kid. So I think that's also actually a tremendous benefit for UCF too. On the women's side, Bryson, pretty interesting situation that's developed. That UCF announced on May 2nd they're doing a recruiting shutdown for this week, May 2nd through the 8th. No visits, no contacts, no phone calls, no evals, no social media interactions. They're going dark for a little bit, and we didn't see a reason why. Is there anything that I believe it's NCAA. It's an NCAA mandated shutdown for the time being, but this is actually kind of a benefit for Coach Messer too, because she still has to assemble her assistant coaches, and she's probably in the process of actually doing some in-house evaluation to get her roster sorted out, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Looking around, obviously assembling your staff, we've been seeing a little rumblings of that. And yeah, I mean, Coach Messer basically has to, has to build this program from the ground up, essentially.
And that is an NCAA. I should clarify. Forgive me, Bryson. I'm sorry, but I wanted to get this out of this. That is an NCAA mandated recruiting shutdown, May 2nd through the 8th. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, you're fine. You're fine. I think it does give Coach Messer some much needed time, I think, to really evaluate where she wants this program to go, because she's essentially starting with a clean slate. The only player that that on the roster that has had any semblance of like real playing time last season is Destiny Thomas. And now that the transfer portal deadline, I believe, is now passed with May 1st, it looks like she's going to stay. So basically, you have Destiny Thomas, and then that's about it. So you're basically starting from the ground up here. And so I think this definitely gives her some much needed time to really figure out who she wants her staff to be, who is she going to, who's in the transfer portal right now, who are some of the new recruits that she can keep, because obviously Abe was probably recruiting some people. So now Messer has to probably get into contact with them. It's a whole bunch of things that it takes a lot of time to do. So, I think that this dead period is a perfect time for her, because obviously she's been very busy lately, but now she can really hone in on the staff side. I believe the staff side, because she definitely needs to do that.
Now we hear these terms thrown around a lot, like dead period. There's actually a definition to what a quote dead period end quote is. A dead period: coaches may not have any in-person contact with recruits or their parents, but communication is still allowed via phone, email, social media, and other digital communication channels. However, we're in a recruiting shutdown, which means no contact at all. Not even no visits, no evals, no phone calls, no nothing. And that ends on the 8th. I think once UCF comes... Now, there are 4 dead periods in the course of the calendar. There's 2 recruiting shutdowns. The next one's going to be August. The next one's going to be in August, and then there's a dead period in July. And now, Bryson, you did a little sleuthing on the web, and I know that you found that we may have a possible lead on at least one assistant coach that may be in Coach Messer's sights.
Yes, it was actually quite the fun time. I was at the baseball game on Sunday against Tulane, and I was hanging out there at the media table with Trace Choco, Brandon Hellwig, and Eric came by after the softball game was over, and the 4 of us just had a grand old time. And one of the things that we noticed while we were there is that Greg Brown, who was a former UCF women's basketball head coach under Joy Williams, the coach before Abe, he changed his Twitter bio to assistant coach UCF women's basketball. We haven't had any official announcements or anything, but you don't just change your Twitter bio for no reason. I don't know if he just did it on a whim, or maybe UCF wants to like announce the whole staff all at once, and he just had recently gotten hired and he went and changed it. And I don't know, but I'm very intrigued that that change has been made, especially with his historical ties to the program.
Yeah. I mean, he's after Coach Williams left, he went to Lipscomb for a period of time, and wrote a book as well. And excuse me. So we know of his ties, obviously, to UCF and of course to the women's basketball world in general. So, well, if that turns out to check out, it'd be cool to have Coach Brown back. He was cool. I remember him, talking to him a lot when I was working in house and Coach Williams was the head coach here, and I understand that there, probably came. Who knows? I don't know if Joy maybe recommended Greg to Coach Messer or whatnot, but it'd be nice. It's always good to see familiar faces around.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good that Coach Messer gets somebody with ties to the program. I think that's a solid move on her part to help integrate her more into the area, I think.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Let's talk, it's a small world, right? Let's talk tennis and golf. Latest up, I want to start with golf here, Bryson, because we had both UCF golf teams make the NCAA regionals. One was not a surprise, but one was.
Oh yes, very much. Yes, very much so. So the men's golf got selected, and when I looked at that now, because looking at the men's golf's performance this season, I honestly did not think the team would get inducted. I thought maybe Johnny Travali would get in as an individual, but as a team, I had my doubts. But my little brother, he's a big golfer, so I figured he'd like it too. And so we sat down together and watched the selection show. And when I saw UCF come up for the New Haven regional, I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So I took a look at the golf stat standings, and this is how close it was for UCF making this. According to Golf Stat, UCF is ranked number 68. Right behind them is Colorado State, who was also a number 11 seed in a regional that I cannot remember. I can't remember which one, but I remember seeing that Colorado State was a number 11 seed in another regional. Mm-hmm. The team ranked ahead of UCF, Iowa. Iowa did not make it as a team into a regional. They got some individuals. I think they got 2 individuals, but as a team, they did not make it. That is how close.
Yeah, UCF's probably one of the last teams in.
So they were
last team in.
Very much on the bubble, and the bubble did not burst.
Yep, and I looked because okay, so how does Iowa make it and UCF not make it? Well, I took a look. Iowa finished in 7th in the Big Ten championship. 31 over now, 31 over. Now the win was 21 over, so it was probably just a tough golf course in general. But Iowa finishing 7th in the Big Ten championship. Now you look at UCF in the American championship, they finish 4th and at 4 under. Now at plus with 3 golfers in the individual top 10. I think that momentum, because looking at men's golf schedule, they did not have the momentum going into this. The American tournament was their best tournament in months. And I think that tournament was able to give them just that small push over a team like Iowa into the regional, which hats off to Johnny Travali, Teddy Tetak, and Igor Eroshenko for doing that. Travali and Tetak, by the way, they were unanimously selected, both of them unanimously selected to the all conference team. So well done to those two, but absolutely well done there by men's golf to be able to get one last tournament in there and be able to make enough of a case for themselves that they got in over a team like Iowa.
So men's golf, they play in New Haven May 16th through the 18th. Of course, their counterparts on the women's side play 1 week earlier in Ann Arbor, Michigan, May 9th through the 11th. So that starts this coming weekend. The women will be keeping an eye on them as well. Let's flip over to tennis, and we have both of those, the schedule set for both of those teams as well. Bryson, the women's tennis team will be heading south to the Miami Regional. That starts tomorrow, Friday, May the 6th through the 8th. They're in the regional down in Coral Gables. They will face Alabama, who's ranked number 40 in the opening round. UCF is ranked number 22. 10 a.m. on Friday. Miami is number 12. So UCF is the number 2 seed in that regional. They will face Stetson at number 64. Miami will. Winners face each other on May the 7th at 1 o'clock. So UCF does not host. We thought that was a possibility. I think the performance in the American Athletic Conference tournament probably is what did that in. But they will play down south against and actually looking at this, it's quite possible, Bryson, though, that they may have been forced to go down to Miami anyway, regardless of what happened.
I will say this: if they would have won the conference tournament or gotten to the final, I think they would have ended up in Gainesville. The way the seeds break out, I think the committee punished them for losing early to USF and dropped them down to Miami, because I think Florida State ended up going to Gainesville. If you look at the seeding, Florida's a 16, Bryson? You have the bracket there. whereas Miami's a 9. So I think that's what happened. I think UCF was in the mix to host. I think if they would have won the tournament, they maybe go to Gainesville. They lose. Because they lost so early, they get, quote, knocked down to Miami. I think it's what happened there.
Yeah, Florida is a 16 seed. And so I will tell you that the rankings, so UCF is ranked number 21 and Alabama is ranked number 41 as of the ITA rankings ranked yesterday.
Check out where is Florida State and their opponent, because that'd be a good comparison. Where Florida State, I think FIU is the opponent. Right?
Florida State is unseeded. They're facing FIU, actually directly opposite. The winner of that plays the winner of South Alabama and Florida.
So where are they ranked in the ITA rankings, though?
In the ITA rankings, I can give you that.
Because that'll give you an idea of what the committee was thinking there.
So FIU is 42, so one spot behind Alabama. And then Florida State is 35.
Yeah.
There you go.
So that's my point. UCF, based on those rankings, should be in Gainesville, but the committee punished them for losing to South Florida, so dropped them down to Miami, basically. Yeah.
So it should be, it should be an interesting matchup though this time. So the winner of UCF Alabama is going to go up against the winner of Miami and Stetson. And UCF women's tennis is no stranger to Miami. They faced them twice in NCAA tournaments in the past couple of years. They lost to them in 2018, and then last season they faced them in the second round and they won that one. And
what a shocker. The committee's putting the same teams over and over again in regionals. Where have we seen that before?
I know, right? Well, UCF also played Miami earlier this season on February 20th down at Coral Gables, lost 5-0 to then number 21. The Canes were ranked number 21 at that time. But familiar opponent, but you have to get through Alabama first.
I will say that, now we'll say this. One of the advantages, and this is an interesting topic in softball that's going on as well. If UCF would have gone to Gainesville, you're paired up against Florida as a 16, which means even if you win the Gainesville Regional, you're paired up against the number 1 overall seed, more than likely. By going to Miami, if you beat Miami, you're probably going against the 8 seed. So it's a little easier from that standpoint. And that is a topic, because I know in softball, like we're talking about softball hosting. If you're softball, I think they'd rather host. Let me just say that up front. However, if softball is a 16 seed, you're going to probably be paired with Oklahoma. Whereas if you go to Gainesville, you're going to be more than likely opposite the Oklahoma bracket. So actually, while UCF dropped a little bit here and quote unquote maybe got punished by the committee, this may work out for them in the long run as far as making a deeper run in the postseason.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the 8 seed, Eric. You want to know who the 8 seed is?
Sure.
Pepperdine.
Oh, yeah. Where we've seen them before.
Been there before.
Yeah, I know. So this could be a great, so we could actually end up having, if UCF makes it that far, we could potentially see a repeat of last time where we have a Miami.
Great originality, everybody. Although tennis has more of a rankings.
Listen, I'm not gonna complain about being sent out to Malibu. I mean, come on. Let's be real here.
Oh yeah,
they're pretty good.
Malibu.
Okay, but I mean, they're a pretty good team. That's my point. It's a tough.
Malibu.
We'll have to ask Brian that.
Yeah,
anyway.
You're literally playing on the beach. Like, it's great.
Hey, I mean, that USF loss could easily have been kind of that kick and punch in the gut they needed to make sure they don't get complacent. Like, because UCF women's tennis has done a fairly decent job through the rest of the year, and so getting that punch in the gut by losing early in the conference tournament could conceivably.
Well, and they're battle tested, and they've been here before, so we'll see what happens. And hey, we know this. There's some unfinished business. UCF Alabama 5 years ago. We know what we're talking about. Finally, on the field, settled. Also in the women's tennis world, by the way, congratulations to Marie Mattel, who got selected as the automatic qualifier for the American Athletic Conference in the NCAA Women's Tennis Singles Championship. So Mattel got selected as an individual for that tournament. That is going to be played after the team championship is over. That's on May 23rd to 28th. So that's going to be after the team championship. And so as long as Mattel doesn't, do something, not do something between now
and then we'll see her play in the singles championship. And I double checked that. I believe that this is now the third straight tournament now that UCF has a singles representative. Zaleva was there in 2019, 2020 there was no tournament because COVID, and then 2021 you had Zaleva and Stolmar. So this is now the third straight season, the fourth all time that UCF could have a singles player represented in that tournament.
Yeah, bummer on the men's side. Nobody got picked.
Yes, that I think that I checked the record book on that one, and this is the first time that there will be no UCF representatives at all since 2016, because since 2016 men's tennis has had a representative in an NCAA tournament in some way, shape, or form. In 2017, it was Corey Lovett in the singles tournament. In 2018, it was Lovett and Vasa in the doubles tournament. In 2019, it was Gabe DeCamps and Pavel and Hildebrand. 2020, no tournament. And then 2021, you have Gabriel DeCamps in the singles. The team made the championship in 2017, 2019, and 2021. So this year now is the first time ever there will be no UCF men's tennis at all since John Roddick took over in 2016. And I mean, it is what it is on that front. I mean, there is some good tennis players there. Hildebrand and Pavel still had a solid season. I just think that maybe they got that Roddick maybe got them paired up together again in the spring a little too late. I think if they were playing together since the beginning of the spring, I think they would be in. But you can't. But that said, he needed to develop a new doubles pair. He really needed to do that. And Cronhay did a good job paired up with Pavel, and then you paired up Cronhay and Cooper White together, and you pair the two of them up, and they've been doing a very solid job. So I mean, I think that this year is very much a development year, I think, for men's tennis, because all you're losing, the only two seniors that are leaving are Kento Yamada, who I believe is left, senior Alan Rubio, and then anyone else that's playing didn't really get a lot of playing time. The only real loss for this team this season is Alan Rubio. So the majority of the players that have done solid this season, Bogdan Pavel, Trey Hildebrand, Cooper White, Leighton Cronhay, they're all coming back next year. And so I think that this could be a situation where Roddick is just kind of taking taking some time now to really build up, so they're firing on all cylinders next season. Now, that said, the scheduling was still really hard. But I mean, hey, if you're going to go and do a sort of a retooling against some of the best in the country and still do what men's tennis did, then I think it should be very interesting to watch them in 2022. And we'll see if this gambit plays off by John Roddick. Mm-hmm. I wanted to make sure I got to this. So track and field and rowing both finished up their regular seasons last weekend. Both of their conference championships are going to be coming the weekend of May 15th. The track and field will be from May 13th to the 15th, and then rowing is on the 15th. That's for the American Conference Championships in both sports. And then also for track, Renaya Jones and Adrian Adams in the discus throw, they swept the AAC Track and Field Athlete of the Week honors. That's the second straight week that UCF has done that, and they did this so by getting both get silver medals in the 100-meter hurdles and the discus throw respectively. Renaya Jones also ran her fastest time in the 100-meter hurdles this season at a 12.79 time. You want to know the one person that beat her? Brittany Anderson, an Olympian that represented Jamaica in 2020.
Not bad.
So not a bad way to end your regular season, I'll tell you that. So it seems like the track is firing on all cylinders heading into the to train up for the conference championship May 13th through 15th, and then rowing finish up their season, and they'll head out to Oak Ridge, Tennessee for their championship on May 15th.
And one last little thing here that I wanted to point out that as we wrap up here. Little interesting news that actually came down this morning, right, Eric? ESPN Plus in Oklahoma have announced an agreement for Sooner Vision to move to ESPN Plus. Multi-year rights agreement launches in August with 100-plus live events a year. Now, Sooner Vision was Oklahoma's pay-per-view platform. Is that right, Eric? It was all run in-house, wasn't it?
It was on in-house production. They would carry a lot of their, like softball, for example. A lot of their games home games would be on that Sooner Vision.
Right. So that was remember we talked about third tier media rights. That's where they were running their and the Big 12. Previously you could do that wherever. OU and Texas's third tier media rights were on the Longhorn Network. OU's was on the Sooner Vision thing, and but now they're moving that to ESPN Plus.
Starting next in August, and that's significant. It means, in fact, they usually have one football game that airs on pay-per-view. That will not be the case now. Now it'll be on ESPN Plus, and I think this is a transition to when they go to the SEC, then they'll join the SEC network and all that stuff deal. So it's a good move for them. Again, I'm in the minority on this. A lot of people right now, the bandwagon, the trendy thing is to say, well, Texas and Oklahoma are going to be here for a couple more years in the Big 12. I'm not buying it. I still think they're going to work a deal out. Somebody will cave. Somebody's going to write the check. Probably four-letter network will write that check, help write that check too. I still think everybody's going to be where they want to be by the fall of 23. And I think, again, you're starting to see little deals being made here, moves happening. And I think this is the latest one with Oklahoma in their third tier.
I'll tell you why I think this is significant from a UCF perspective. This shows you the power of ESPN Plus.
Yep.
Now,
absolutely.
You and I have talked about it, and listen, we're biased. We do work for UCF on ESPN Plus. I get it, but you know something, folks? That doesn't mean we're wrong.
I mean, all the college sports
ESPN
are there,
Plus,
basically.
yeah, ESPN Plus has been a huge boost to UCF outside of football and basketball. Huge boost in terms of getting the profile of softball, baseball, women's basketball, volleyball out front. Okay? And I hope and pray, I don't know where we are with the Big 12 TV contracts, but I hope and pray that whoever's negotiating that, those third tier rights are going to go to are going to ESPN Plus.
I would be surprised.
Is there.
I would be surprised.
Listen, I agree with you, but you know something? You and I, in all these years, we've seen stranger things happen. I just like it's been such a tremendous boost for UCF and all of these programs that we care about and that we want to see succeed and we want to see get the exposure that they deserve. I don't know what the other alternatives would be, but I'll tell you the truth, I don't think that you get the kind of exposure that you get.
No, ask the Big Ten and how that Big Ten Network Plus is going for them.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, but the thing is, and this is something that's important, you can strike a TV deal with another partner. So if you don't sign a deal with ESPN, you could sign with Fox or CBS for football, for example, and still have a deal with ESPN for other sports. In fact, Conference USA just struck a deal with ESPN. Conference USA has no deal with ESPN. They just struck a deal with ESPN Plus to carry the conference tournament. So it's now becoming to the point where ESPN Plus is like the place where a lot of conferences are going, even if they don't have a quote, maybe they don't have a deal with them for football or basketball, but they might go with them for Olympic sports. So that's something to monitor as well. I would not be surprised if you see some combination of that. We got to see how the other conferences are playing. The Big Ten reportedly has a deal pretty much done. Are going to get over $1 billion, so they can get away with it.
Ugh, wow.
But I would argue that the Big Ten.
Now, by the way, that's they're splitting $1 billion a year between all of their schools. The Americans, remember the Americans TV contract with ESPN is $1 billion total through 2032. I think it was, Eric.
Something like that. Yeah.
2031, 2032.
Sure.
This is $1 billion a year being split between those schools.
Correct. And they're probably going to be on Fox. There's some talks they might be on CBS, might pick up the package. But as far as the Big 12, I think they're going to get a good money deal. That's why the Big 12, I think the belief is they're going to be very confident they're going to get a good deal because there's television options, there's streaming options. And I don't think the Big 12 is going to sign an exclusive deal with anybody. I think it's going to be multiple partners. And I think there'll be multiple platforms for that. And
I would the next deal after that's going to be the bowl game too. That's the other
correct, the bowl games. And I think people have to. Yes, football is a big part of this, but the Big 12 basketball TV deal is a big deal. Like that's the big, right? That's the number one conference for ESPN as far as television. Like their big Monday schedules around the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
They play a ton of Big 12 basketball.
It is bigger than other conferences.
Absolutely.
For sure. I don't think it's as big as football, but it is big,
right?
Comparatively speaking, in basketball,
which helps. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, Oklahoma going to the ESPN Plus now for their other sports, starting in August. And again, I think we're starting to see dominoes play out here.
Yeah, it's gonna be a busy summer, man. I'll tell you that. We are going to be busy on this podcast throughout the summer with all these deals. Make sure you follow us at UCF Banneret _SBN. Follow us individually, Eric Lopez Elo, Jeff _Sharon. It's Bryson Turner. Also, thanks to Drew, Statboy Drew, for coming in the first 2 seconds. You also want to make sure that you follow Kyle Nash as well, the SOTG for the Student of the Game on Twitter. Follow us at facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. Thank you so much for listening to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. We are a production of Vox Media. Make sure that you subscribe to us if you don't already, wherever you get your podcasts from. And follow us on all of our social media channels as well. And don't forget to follow us on our YouTube channel as well for the latest post-game reaction from all of our UCF sports. For Bryson Turner, Eric Lopez, and Andrew Blukop, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Enjoy the weekend. We will catch you next week.